I never wanted to live in that house. It was my grandfather's, an old Victorian-style home, sitting on the edge of town, surrounded by dead trees and broken memories. When he passed away, my mother inherited it and insisted we move in to save money. I was 17, angry at the world, and I resented the idea of trading my modern suburban life for a house that smelled like dust and regret. But I didn't have a choice, and I didn't know what was waiting for me in the basement. From the first day, something felt off about the basement. It was unfinished, bare cement walls, a low ceiling, and a single flickering light bulb. Against the far wall there was a door. It was made of old wood, reinforced with metal bands, and locked with a heavy, rusted padlock. "What's in there?" I asked my mom. She hesitated. "I don't know. Your grandfather never let anyone go inside. Just leave it alone." That should have been my first warning. But of course I didn't listen. I woke up to a sound, a faint, persistent scratching coming from beneath my floor. I told myself it was rats. The house was old after all. But the sound continued for hours, a slow, methodical scraping, like fingernails against wood. It wasn't coming from the walls, it was coming from underneath the floorboards. A week passed, and the noises grew worse. The scratching turned into tapping, then knocking. Then came the whispers. Late at night, when the house was silent, I heard them drifting up from the basement, soft, urgent, calling my name. I told my mother, but she brushed it off. "Old houses make noises," she said. "You're imagining things." But I wasn't, because one night when I pressed my ear against the floor, I heard breathing. I became obsessed with the locked door. Who had put the padlock there? What was behind it? My grandfather had lived in this house for over 50 years, and yet no one had ever been inside that room. One afternoon, while rummaging through old boxes in the attic, I found a key. It was small, silver, and ice-cold to the touch. I knew exactly where it belonged. That night, I waited until my mother was asleep before creeping down to the basement. My hands trembled as I fit the key into the lock. It turned easily, too easily, like it had been waiting for me. The padlock fell to the ground with a heavy thud. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The first thing that hit me was the smell: damp earth, rotting wood, and something sickly sweet. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a small, windowless room, and in the center of the room was a chair. A single wooden chair, sitting beneath a bare light bulb. But that wasn't what made me stumble backward in horror. No, it was the chains. The heavy iron chains bolted to the floor. I ran. I locked the door. I swore I'd never go down there again. But the next morning, I found something shoved under my bedroom door. A diary. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, the handwriting was frantic, uneven. My grandfather's handwriting. I opened to a random entry. June 3rd, 1979, I hear it again, the voice, it says it wants out. But I know better. It's a liar. It's a demon. It wears the faces of the ones I love. I cannot let it out. I turned the page. July 18, 1982, it knows my name now. It calls me in the dark. I must be strong. September 5th, 1987, I am tired. But if I fail, it will be free. God help us all. I dropped the diary, my hands shaking. Then from the basement, I heard the lock click open. I don't remember running down the stairs. I barely remember opening the door. But I do remember what I saw. The chair was empty. The chains lay broken on the floor. And in the shadows, something moved. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its face shifting, flickering between features. My mother's face, my grandfather's, my own. Then it smiled. A wide, unnatural grin, stretching far too wide for any human mouth. "Thank you," it whispered. And then it was gone. We moved out a week later. My mother never asked why, and I never told her. But I kept waking up at night, expecting to hear the familiar sounds of the old house. I told myself it was over. I moved into the Craftsman house on Maplewood Drive because it was cheap and because the listing said historic charm. The landlord, Mr. Greer, handed me the keys with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Basement's off limits," he said, tapping a handwritten sign on the door. "Utilities only. No entry. Old wiring. Liability issues." I didn't argue. I was too busy hauling boxes into the empty living room, my breath fogging in the November chill. The house creaked like a rocking chair, floorboards groaning under my feet, but it was mine. My first solo place after the divorce. That night, I heard the scratching. It came from the basement door, a skittering like fingernails dragging across wood. I told myself it was mice, or the furnace. But when I pressed my ear to the door, the sound stopped. A draft seeped through the crack carrying a smell I couldn't place. Sweet and sour, like rotting fruit. The next morning I found muddy footprints on the basement stairs. They were small, barefoot, trailing up from the darkness below. I called Mr. Greer. His voicemail was full. The basement door was unlocked. I descended slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand. The stairs groaned, each step a protest. The air thickened, damp and heavy, as I reached the bottom. The room was empty except for a rusted water heater and shelves of paint cans. But the walls, someone had covered them in newspaper clippings. The headlines blurred as I scanned them. Local girl 19 missing since 2004. Police dismiss basement theory in disappearance. Landlord cleared of wrongdoing. All from the same year. All featuring the same grainy photo of a smiling girl, blonde like me. In the corner, a name was scrawled in red marker, Lena. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, "You shouldn't be down here." Behind the water heater, a loose board hid a gap in the wall. I crawled through cobwebs clinging to my hair and found a hidden room. A twin bed with mold-stained sheets, a desk cluttered with disposable cameras and notebooks, and a corkboard pinned with photos, dozens of them. Women, blonde women, in their bedrooms, at their windows. One was me, taken through my kitchen window last week. The floor creaked behind me. Mr. Greer stood in the doorway, a crowbar in his hand. His polite smile was gone. "You were supposed to follow the rules," he said. I lunged for the gap in the wall, but he grabbed my ankle. The crowbar grazed my shoulder as I kicked free, scrambling back into the main basement. He laughed, low and steady. Lena didn't follow the rules either. The basement door was locked. He'd planned this, removed the light bulbs, barricaded the stairs. I ran blindly, crashing into shelves, paint cans shattering around me. His footsteps echoed, unhurried. "I've always liked this house," he said. "So many places to hide." I found the furnace, its metal door rusted open, and inside, a bone. He cornered me by the stairs, crowbar raised. "You're different though," he said. Lena fought, the others begged. "But you're curious." I swung the flashlight, cracking his jaw. He stumbled, and I climbed the shelves, tearing at the basement door's hinges. Cold air blasted my face as I squeezed through, screaming for help. A neighbor heard. The police found Mr. Greer's collection, photos, journals, and a lockbox buried under the floorboards. Inside were teeth. The news called him the Maplewood Watcher. They linked him to 6 disappearances between 2004 and 2012. Lena's body was never found. I moved out the next week. The new tenants got a discount. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I check the locks twice, and I never, ever open basement doors.